Go ahead.
Good morning. This is the story of Wali Dad, and the story was written by Aaron Shepard, and it is for ages 5 to 7. In a mud hut at the far end of the town lived a grass cutter named Wali Dad. Every morning, Wali Dad would go out into the fields, and he would cut and bundle grass to sell in the bazaar. He would get 30 annas. 10 annas he would use for food and clothes, 10 annas he would use for any other necessities, and 10 annas he would put in a jar under his bed. Wali Dad lived this way for many years. Well, one evening he decided that he was going to go and count the annas in the jar. So he pulls the jar out from under the bed, and what do you know? The jar is overflowing. So Wali Dad the next morning put the annas in a sack and took them into town. Once he got into town, he found a bazaar, and he exchanged all of his coins for this magnificent bracelet. He took the bracelet to a friend of his who was a traveling salesman, and he said, "My friend, who is the most magnificent and virtuous lady in the land?" And his friend said, "Let me think about that a minute. Queen Davi of Kastan is the most noble lady." So Wali Dad gave his friend the bracelet and said, "Would you please give this to the queen with my compliments?" So the next time that the traveling salesman was on the road, he stopped and got an audience with the queen. He said, "Your Majesty, I have a gift from Wali Dad." The queen was so glad to have this gift, and she thought it was so magnificent that she decided to send Wali Dad a gift of 6 bolts of silk. So the traveling salesman goes back to the little village and tells Wali Dad, "This is a gift from the queen, 6 bolts of silk." "Oh no," said Wali Dad, "I live in a mud hut. What am I going to do with bolts of silk?" "Take 2 of the bolts of silk for yourself. Who is the most magnificent and virtuous man in the land?" And his friend thought about it for a moment, and he said, "King Pavan of Nukkabad is the most noble gentleman." So Wali Dad said, "Take 2 of the bolts of silk for yourself, and take the rest the next time you're in Nukkabad to the king." So the traveling salesman went to Nukkabad and got an audience with the king, and he said, "Your Majesty, this is a gift from Wali Dad." And the king was overwhelmed, and he said, "Well, if he can send me a fine gift, I must send him a fine gift in return. Take these 6 horses to your friend Wali Dad." So the merchant went back, and he stopped at the mud hut of his friend, and he said, "Wali Dad, here are 6 horses from the king," and they were magnificent horses. Well, Wali Dad became very dismayed. "I live in a mud hut. What am I going to do with 6 magnificent horses?" He said, "Here, I know what I'll do. You take 2 of these magnificent horses to help you with your carrying in your caravan, and take the other 4 to the queen." So the merchant took his caravan, and the next time he was in Kastan, he got another audience with the queen, and he said, "Your Majesty, I have a gift from Wali Dad, 4 magnificent horses." The queen said, "These are such magnificent horses. Wali Dad must be a suitor. I will send you with 6 magnificent elephants to take to Wali Dad, and I will go and visit him at a later time." So the traveling merchant went back to Wali Dad, and he said, "Wali Dad, here are 6 magnificent elephants." And Wali Dad was very, very dismayed. "Oh my God, what shall I do? I live in a mud hut. What will I do with elephants? How can I take care of them?" And he thought about it in a minute, and he said, "Listen, take 1 of the elephants for yourself, and take the other 5 to the king of Nukkabad." So the traveling salesman got together yet another caravan and went back to Kastan. And he went back to Nukkabad, and there he had another audience with the king. And he said, "Your Majesty, I have a gift from Wali Dad." And the king said, "Wali Dad is the most magnificent person, and I will go and visit him instead of sending a gift." So the merchant hurried back to Wali Dad and said, "Wali Dad, I don't know what you're going to do, but the king and the queen are coming to visit." Wali Dad thanked his friend, and he thought and he thought and he thought, and he said, "What I must do is get out of this mud hut. I must go away and leave this village forever." So he packed up all his little belongings, and he started off on the road. And as he walked, he began to realize he wasn't alone. He looked to the left, and there was a magnificent lady in jewels and gold. And he looked to the other side, and there was a lady with magnificent golds and silver. And they said, Wali Dad, where are you going? And Wali Dad said, I'm in big trouble. I have to leave this town. And they said, Wali Dad, you have the heart of a king, even though you live in a mud hut. But you must go back. If you do not, something very bad will happen. Wali Dad thought about it a minute, and he turned around, and he started back toward his mud hut. And as he walked, his shoes turned into gold slippers. And he walked some more, and his clothes became royal robes. And as he walked, his plain hat turned into a gigantic, magnificent turban. By the time Wali Dad got back to his humble mud hut, it had turned into a magnificent onion dome palace. And a servant ran up. Wali Dad, Lord Wali Dad, there's a caravan coming from the east. And another servant ran up. Master Wali Dad, there's a servant coming from the west. There's a caravan coming from the west. And Wali Dad knew to expect them. So he said, go and make a feast ready. And the servants did. And first in his door came the king of Nekabad. He said, are you Wali Dad? And he said, yes, your majesty. Welcome to my humble home. And before he could get the king into the side, the queen came in. And Wali Dad greeted her. Welcome to my humble home, your majesty. Well, Queen Davi took one look at King Pavan and fell instantly in love. And King Pavan took one look at Queen Davi and fell instantly in love. So Wali Dad took them into the feast, and they talked and they engaged themselves in conversations for the whole day. And the next day they decided that they were going to marry. So Wali Dad gave them his magnificent palace as his wedding gift. And that cemented the two kingdoms as one. So Wali Dad thought, now is my time to leave. So he started off on the road again. And as he walked, he realized he was not alone. There was a woman in magnificent clothes on one side and a woman with magnificent clothes on the other side. And they said, Wali Dad, you have done a great thing. You have kept two kingdoms that might have gone to war, now are in peace. So we will offer you one wish. And Wali Dad thought about it a minute, and he said, I have my wish. I wish to be a humble woodcutter who lives at the far end of the town in a mud hut and only has enough honors to give to the poor. Thank you.